Hi guys, Dr. Mike Carberry here. I'm here to talk to you today about the opioid crisis. And it is a crisis. The opioid crisis in this country is basically out of control. And a lot of people I talk to, they don't realize how out of control it is. So a couple of things that got me zeroed in on this. I had a family member, somebody I really am close to, and he had an injury. And he was put on opioids at like 17 years old. And a year later, he's a heroin addict. It was for a skateboard injury, and he turned to drugs. And I don't know if he would have made that leap. I don't think he would have made that leap if it wasn't for the opioid prescription. And it was really tough. We almost lost him. We had to go get him and get him into a program. And luckily we didn't lose this individual because he's a fantastic person. He's now, he's getting married, he's got, a bright future, and he's a great guy. So I think of how many millions of people are falling into that same trap, and how many of them aren't actually rescued or saved just because, somebody doesn't know what to do for it. So I started looking at this problem a few years back, and it was disconcerting to me. A couple of things really made me zero in on it, because one, I had that personal connection, but when I started looking, I started wondering, well, what are these opioids prescribed for? And I was shocked to find that the #1 diagnosis for an opioid prescription is low back pain. I'm like, I'm a chiropractor. Now, I teach people how to set up medical clinics, and we don't just zero in on low back pain. We do chronic degenerative arthritis, but low back pain fits into that. Low back pain is the second most common reason to be in the hospital. According to the Journal of the American Medical Association and the Archives of Internal Medicine, low back pain is second to being born for a reason to be in the hospital. And it's second to the common cold for a reason to be in a family practitioner's office. So it's a very, probably the most common problem that we have. If you look at chronic degenerative arthritis, that's the biggest segment of the population. And low back pain is certainly one of the bigger segments of chronic degenerative arthritis. And it's chronic and it's degenerative, which means it comes from things way back when. And what's happening is America has been sold a bill of goods over the last 25 to 30 years that pain should be dealt with by covering it up, by either getting your body not to be able to perceive it or shrink up inflammatory processes so you don't feel it, because inflammation isn't always the cause of the pain, but it can be a very common cause of the pain. What America hasn't been told is inflammation is part of the healing process. And when you stop the inflammation, many times you stop the healing process. So there's just a lot of misinformation out, and it's convenient for companies that want to sell these medications, and they're doing a pretty good job of it. Lots and lots, like millions and millions, if not billions of dollars going to these drugs. So opioids went from, not really an American problem, and in a quarter of a century became the biggest American problem. Opioids are now the leading cause of death of Americans under the age of 50. So you look at that and you go, that's our competition. If you're in physical medicine, if you're trying to help people avoid problems with chronic degenerative arthritis or posture or any of those things, well, opioids is the #1 treatment that we're competing against, and they're the leading cause of death. You look at it and you go, we should be able to stop that procedure from happening, but it's not happening. So we've had contact with Dr. John Rosa. Dr. John Rosa was on the board of New York Chiropractic College for 15 years. He was the president or chairman of that board for the last 3 years he was there. He's now a board emeritus. I think I said that right, but there's only 5 people in New York Chiropractic College's history in the last 100 years that ever got to that status. And so he's definitely a somebody in chiropractic. He has 13 integrated practices in the Washington, D.C. area. And he has firsthand confronted this demon of opioids and the crisis that it's creating in this country. And he's the only chiropractor to be appointed as a surrogate on the White House Council of Opioid Abuse. So he's right in there with lawmakers and with the cabinet and with the president in getting facts on this crisis. He's been since appointed a consultant to the Homeland Security, to the TSA, to the DEA, to several state organizations on trying to control this problem. So he's now very, very connected in government, and he's been working like diligently trying to get this crisis exposed. And he shared numbers with us and our clients at our conventions. The last couple conventions we had, he came to them as a guest speaker. And he also came to our mastermind that we had recently in Asheville, North Carolina at the Biltmore Estate, which, by the way, is awesome. He will be at our next convention, which is coming up in April. You really want to come hear this guy speak. You want to be able to be there so you can, I mean, we have a great lineup of speakers, and I'm going to be explaining that as we go. But, we have John Rosa is going to be one of the speakers. We have a couple of anesthesiologists that are going to be there to speak. We have Grant Cardone, who's going to come and tell us how we can ratchet this up to the next level to try to tackle this problem, because he has an interest in stopping the opioid crisis. And so just a great lineup of speakers. But John Rosa shared with us a lot of the statistics coming out of Washington, like that one I just gave you about the United States. Leading cause of death in the United States of Americans under the age of 50 is opioids. That's terrible. Another stat he shared with us is 80% of heroin addicts got there with a prescription of an opioid. So it's a, one thing leads to another. They get cut off the opioid, price, and they need to do something, and they go out and they start reaching for heroin, which is actually cheaper than opioids on the street. So, which there's a lot of opioids being sold on the street as well. So we have this crisis. It's growing all the time. There's interest. We've all heard it on the news. We've all heard it on media, social media and everything else, that there's attention on this now, focusing on the problem. And some people go, well, good, we have attention on it, so therefore somebody's handling it, so I don't have to worry about it. That's not actually the case. The numbers that he shared with us is it's over 650,000 prescriptions a day. Now, they're trying to limit how long the prescription can be written, but it just means that people are coming in, they're not getting 3 weeks anymore, they're getting 7 days, so they're coming in for a prescription every 7 days. And it's terrible because these people are becoming drug addicts from it. So, and does it make everybody a drug addict? Probably not. Does it make a lot of people a drug addict? Yes, it does. And I think probably everybody watching this knows somebody who fell into that trap because it's that widespread. After all, it is the leading cause of death of Americans under the age of 50. I believe opioids have killed more people than all the wars since the Korean War combined, or the Vietnam War combined, which is a lot of people. That's terrible. It's a bullet being shot at ourselves by ourselves. So 650,000 prescriptions a day written in this country. It just leads to devastating effects on the family, on a person's their viewpoint of themselves, their pride. They're such a degraded person after this that they just think they should just die. They just want to be left alone, and it's a terrible, terrible crisis. And one of the things that is really terrible is and I'm not a person who likes to make people victims, because I figure if you're a victim, you're not going to get any better. But to blame this on the person who was prescribed it for a back pain or for a surgery or for whatever, and then that person becomes addicted to those medications. Evidence shows, according to Dr. Rosa, 3 to 5 days and the patient's addicted. So if you get put on these things, well, if you get addicted because you got put on a drug that was highly addictive after a surgery, well, is that person actually the cause of their problem, or are they a victim? I would say that qualifies for the definition of a victim. They were innocent, they did something following the advice of a professional, the professional was following the advice of a sales rep, and all of a sudden you end up with this tragedy. And you have all these people on these drugs. Well, there is effort in Washington now to expose this problem and to make people more aware of it, but there's 3 areas of attention that are needed. One is basically law enforcement. It's become an illegal trade. There's pills being sold in school. There's pills being sold on the street. So that's a factor of it. To touch on that, for my birthday in September last year, my wife bought me a fishing trip, a guided fishing trip. And I won't go into the whole story of the fishing trip, but it was, you go out on a boat off the beach in the Pacific Ocean in Oregon. You go out through the waves, which is really cool. We go out and fish. And there was a group of us on there. There was about 4 of us or 5 of us. And we became very tight because when you go through an experience like that, you know, you can spend all day together fishing. You get to know these people. One of the people on that boat was a prison guard for a women's prison in Oregon. And she told me, she said she's been a prison guard for over 20 years. And she said, it's really a shame because in the last 5 years, the demographics of the prisoners have completely changed. And she said there's so many people who you would never expect to be in prison that got there because of an opioid addiction that came from a prescription. And I didn't say anything to her about my involvement in this cause or in this stopping this crisis. She just said that, and I was floored when she told it to me. So there's law enforcement. The other aspect of it is, you know, rehab. You get addicted people and you got to put them through rehab. And yeah, those 2 things are needed. Law enforcement to stop the illegal trade of this by, you know, maybe even stopping doctors from writing the prescription. But the third category is being ignored. And that connects to the first category of stopping the prediction, or of the prescription. The third category is, what do you do for these people who are in pain? That's not being looked at. What do you do for these people who are in pain? You know, people are going to want something for their pain. So if they're chronically in pain, which a lot of these people were in chronic pain, I was in my clinic in Chattanooga last month, and I talked to a patient who just realized as I was talking to her how long he'd been on these medications. 12 years. 12 years. She started to tear up as soon as she realized that. But it was almost like she was numb to it, but I could tell she realized, what am I doing still on these drugs? That is wrong. That is not a healthy therapy. That's going to kill that woman. And we don't want her to die. She's a wonderful person. So what do you do instead? Well, the model that I've been doing in my clinics in different states around the country, and the model that we teach our clients in AMI, Advanced Medical Integration, is a model that reverses chronic degenerative arthritis to whatever degree is possible. You know, we don't make people back like they were before they got injured, but any doctor who treats chronic degenerative arthritis, which is the most common health problem that human beings have, will tell you, excuse me, they will tell you that these things stem from injuries that happened a decade or 2 or 3 earlier than when they showed up in the office. So what do you do for that? How do you stop that? Well, you have to reverse the effects of what occurs after somebody gets injured. We know this. Dr. Rene Callier, a physiatrist from Southern California, brilliant guy, he came up with the theory of forward head carriage. And what he said was, when somebody injures their spine, no matter where they injure it, if you keep your head back, where it's supposed to be, centered over your spine, that's putting pressure on the facet of that joint. So you unconsciously lean forward to relieve the facet. And that leads to what's called forward head carriage. And he laid out a whole lot of things that happen from that are not actually very beneficial to the patient or something that you would want to have. And basically what it is you shift your head forward, you start to compress your lungs, you start to compress your heart, you start to stretch your esophagus, and you decrease peristalsis, digestion, oxygen to the brain. You make the heart work harder. So what are the results of that? Well, you get decreased oxygen in the brain is dementia. Heart working harder is cardiomegaly, which can lead to heart disease. Stretching the esophagus and slowing down peristalsis could lead to prolonged fecal material in the colon, which can cause horrible things like colon cancer. Colon cancer through the roof, dementia through the roof, heart disease, #1 cause of death in the United States. So you look at it and you go, maybe some of these conditions have a physical cause and origin. And what do? We give them a chemical that makes them not feel it. That doesn't make sense to me. That doesn't make sense to me at all. So what do we do in our clinics? Well, we do a combination. It's a medical clinic that's supervised by a medical personnel, either a medical doctor or a nurse practitioner, and they have teams that work underneath of them. A rehab team, a chiropractic team. And these teams are working on these patients, actually getting, if it's a joint that's not moving right, a chiropractor can help gently break the adhesions to increase range of motion. But the posture is still off. So the rehab team doing good core posture to get that posture back where it's supposed to be, to bring that head back as far as it can. And we've seen before and after x-rays of patients with tremendous improvement. It's not easy, but compared to how long it took to get in the situation they're in, we're reversing people in 8, 10, 12 weeks, which is, you look at it, you go, that's a ridiculously short period of time. I'm sure that that patient I spoke to would go back to the beginning of 12 years ago, and if we asked her, would you like to be on these drugs for the next 12 years, or would you like to do this rehab program for the next 12 weeks? If she knew what the future was going to hold for her, she would pick the rehab program any day of the week. How do I know that? Well, she's doing a rehab program now. The complicating factor is the medication she's on that is interfering with her ability to get well. And that is a crying shame. And she knows it, and she wants off of it, and she doesn't know how to do it. So our medical personnel are working with her and her family physician to help her do that. But 12 years on an opioid, man, we're lucky that woman's alive. We need to stop this. We need to come up with the solution, or not come up with the solution. We need to promote the solution more so that it's a better way to go. One of the things we know that was done in the promotion of these narcotics and these opioids was to cut reimbursement to alternative therapies. The ones that have been out for years and decades and maybe even a century of rehab, chiropractic, teaching the body to function the way it was before it got injured, which is a fraction of the cost of the opioids. That's a crime. I think it's a crime enough that somebody should actually pay. I'm not in the business of tracking those people down and making them accountable, but man, I don't think that's right, that somebody could do that, get away with it, turn our country into a bunch of drug addicts and not have to be held accountable. You look at the soldiers coming out of our wars. They're being given opioids. It was promoted that these soldiers shouldn't be feeling any pain when they gave so much service to our country, so they put them on these opioids so they don't feel pain. Well, that ruins their lives. Our suicide rate in this country right now, I believe it's 122 soldiers a day are committing suicide. We have more soldiers that committed suicide than were killed in actual war. That's not okay. There's something majorly wrong with that. So we need to change the way we do things, and that's what we're trying to do at AMI. I'm just going to check my time here because I want to make sure that this doesn't go too long. But that's what I wanted to share with you today. I wanted you to realize that that's what we're about. We are not promoting opioid use. We're trying to stop opioid use. And the only way to effectively do that is come up with an alternative. At our convention in April, there's a link down at the bottom. You can click on that. If you're a client, you're covered at a convention, you're entitled to go to those conventions at no charge because you're part of the group. If you're not a client, you can now go to these conventions, and there's a fee for it. If you click on that link, they'll go over with you what is involved in that. But you can come hear our speakers. You can hear Rosa speak, Dr. John Rosa. You can hear Grant Cardone speak. You can hear me speak. You can hear other people in healthcare. And I don't want to give away the story yet. We have a whole bunch of people that are going to be very, very effective speakers at that convention. It's 2 days. It's a Friday and Saturday. I believe it's the third week in April. But you should come to it. You should be there. You should see what we're about. You should learn about this crisis. You should learn about what can be done for this crisis. And if you're moved by it all, you can become part of our team. So anyway, this is Dr. Mike Carberry. I just want to tell you, thank you for listening. Thanks for being interested in this topic. I think we need more people to be interested in it so we can actually end this crisis and move our healthcare system into more of a function-based treatment program that works on not eliminating symptoms, but improving function so the symptoms go away and stay away. Thanks for listening. Dr. Mike Carberry, Advanced Medical Integration.